You're listening to the Access Success Podcast, produced by Access U, a division of Access Advertising and Public Relations. Hey, let's do something big. I'm your host, Rachel Schneider. Welcome to the Access Success Podcast, where we highlight important topics focused on education in every form it takes. This episode, we're going to take a dive into the not-so-mysterious Instagram algorithm and talking about what content is going to get you noticed heading into 2023. And are boosted posts worth it? How much strategy goes behind crafting a paid social media post? Hear from the experts today. Plus, as the target consumers, what are the things that we want to see on our feeds, and what things have we noticed have dominated over the past few years that maybe aren't anymore? Joining us on the show today to explain are two Access U team members, our social media manager, Briana Sepulveda, and digital media specialist, Lucas Weaver. Thank you both for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And for those who don't know, this is actually Bree's first time on the podcast. She is a newer team member here at Access U, but we're so happy to have her. She's been a rock star so far. So thanks again for joining the team, Bree.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So let's just dive right into it. The first thing that I wanted to ask you both is, what are the three most important factors that are affecting Instagram's algorithm today?
So the three most important things affecting Instagram's algorithm are relationship, interest, and relevancy. When we think about relationship on Instagram's algorithm, right? Social media is meant to be a social platform. So are you following your business partners? How often are you responding to your followers' comments and messages? So active community management improves visibility. Being social on Instagram, for the most part, if your customer is speaking to you, then you should speak back. And the more you interact with them, the more your content's going to show in your followers' feeds. So next up is interest. So what are you putting out there for your audience? When the algorithm recognizes that a user enjoys a specific kind of content, they'll put that at the forefront of their Instagram feeds. So for example, if you like tattoos and you follow your favorite tattoo artist on Instagram, if you're following them, liking their content, commenting, Instagram's going to understand, okay, this person likes this tattoo artist, so we're going to bump up their content so that it's more visible. So you really want to focus on whether or not your content is the most interesting to your audience. And then lastly, relevancy and timeliness. Recent posts around a trending topic will outperform others. So, for example, if we look at the unfortunate coverage of Kanye West, he's saying a lot of controversial things. And in the moment, those outlets that are posting on Instagram about pictures of him and things that he's saying, that's going to bump up to the top of a lot of people's feeds because it's relevant to the time of what she's saying certain things. So those are the three things to consider when you're building your Instagram's algorithm.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially for relevancy. Every single piece of post or content that is posted on Instagram is kind of ranked in terms of how relevant it is. And to speak to the timeliness, if you're posting right now, that's going to be seen as more relevant than a post that you did, maybe a week ago or a month ago. So that's why it's so important to post frequently and consistently.
Gotcha. And so what are some other factors that can play a role? I mean, I know that with so many apps nowadays, it can be hard to compete for that time on a user's phone when they're transitioning from, TikTok to Instagram to then Facebook and maybe even Snapchat sometimes. I found myself, I don't even use Snapchat anymore because the stories have been taken over by Instagram and Facebook more often. But how does session time play a role?
Yeah, so session time I think is super important, especially recently, with TikTok becoming so big. I will spend quite a bit of time scrolling through TikTok and not even realize it. But by the time I'm done, at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I've gotten my social media fix. I don't really want to look at anything else. So certainly I think with so many people, TikTok is now the largest social media network. It's grown the fastest of any in history. I think that's where people want to go. And so they're spending less time on these other platforms like Instagram. So I think there's a decline that we're seeing in engagement and overall usage on platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, etc.
Yeah, Lucas touched on a really important point. The way people interact with Instagram, it's different to every person. So there are people who are constantly scrolling through their feeds. They're obviously going to see more content because they're more active on the platform. But you also want to consider those who maybe check Instagram maybe once a week or, open the app briefly and then they want to see 3 or 4 posts and then have to move on to either responding to like a message or just putting their phone down, something happening in the real world. So you really want to consider how frequently you're posting. HubSpot recently announced that 45% of business to consumer and business to business marketers post on Instagram multiple times a week and even daily. So that's going to help you kind of get your content in front of both kinds of Instagram viewers.
Yeah, and another thing I'll add too is how many users somebody's following. So, if you have a client or somebody that's following your brand account, but they have a bunch of other brand accounts, they're all competing for the same amount of time that person is on Instagram. So, it depending on how long that they're spending and how often they check Instagram, your content might not be seen if it's not as relevant or as interesting to them. So that's something to consider as well.
So for businesses who do want their content to be seen and maybe they want it to be seen by like a certain demographic of people, let's talk boosted posts. What are they and how can they be beneficial?
Yeah, so a boosted post is quite simple, really. So you've already posted the content and then you're throwing some dollars behind it to really increase that reach and awareness to reach more people. And that's different from actual ad campaigns where you're creating everything at once with new creative, who you want to go to, and how much you want to spend behind it. So boosted posts are really just content you've already got, but you want to throw some dollars behind it.
And then how can this be kind of a hack for the Instagram algorithm? I mean, being that the chronological feed has been brought back as an option, the default experience of the app can be guided by that algorithm. So how can this give businesses a little bit of a boost?
Personally speaking, I am currently following 850 accounts on Instagram. Yeah. And what that means is 850 Instagram users are competing for my eyes all at once. So I personally don't see 850 posts at a time. I'm probably going to scroll through the top 5, 10, if I'm really bored, 20. So what boosted posts will do is it will make sure that the content that you're putting out there and investing in is going to outshine among all of the competitors that your followers are also following.
Yeah. So that being said, what are some good tips for creating boosted content? Because I know that, you may want to identify a post that is going to perform well because there are some additional factors in there. Even if you put money behind a post, it might not elevate to the same levels if you have some strategy behind it. So what are things to keep in mind?
Yes. So follow the research and follow the data and the numbers. So certainly you want to go back to the content that you've already posted and figure out what is already engaging well with your followers, and then go from there. So if you know something is working well for the target audience that you already have and you just want to reach more people like them, throw dollars behind a post that you already enjoy and that they already enjoy, that already is high quality content and relevant to your brand. Now, I'll say also that boosting has a couple different parameters here. Or there's a couple of different ways to go about it. So if you want to reach more people like who's already following you, the targeting is where it really becomes important because you can just select audiences like who you already have and the interests that they are already interested in, or you can try to branch out, reach new markets, reach new audiences, and reach more people that way across the country.
And I know that we mentioned authenticity before, just in talking about social media and how there is more of a demand for behind the scenes content. And now I think we're still seeing with this algorithm, we're only seeing content that is going to be a lot of videos, or it's, as you said, very high quality. But how can people make sure that their content is consistent with what they're putting out there, especially within a boosted post, and why is that important?
Just because if you have a boosted post and it has a certain feel or imagery to it, and then someone sees that post and then comes onto your profile, but it doesn't match what they just saw, that inconsistency can really be a problem for someone when they're expecting one thing, but then they actually realize and see a different thing. So, they already have this perception of you just by seeing this one post, this one image and a piece of copy that goes with it. And if that doesn't match, then they're not as likely to engage with you, and they'll be like, oh, well, this is not something that I'm interested in, actually. And then they might even have a negative perception of your brand, which is obviously what you would want to avoid. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, and to add on to that with an example, I read a recent blog post about a social media marketer who wanted to experiment with boosted posts and see how successful the results would be. And so I believe she explained it that her overall Instagram content was centered around social media marketing. However, the post that she decided to boost was a adorable drawing of little duck characters. Okay. And so by putting the dollars behind it, a lot of people saw it, interacted with it, but she realized that it did not affect her follower count at all.
Okay.
So that's a very dramatic example of how the content of the boosted post differed from her profile, but it definitely drives Lucas's point of make sure what you're choosing to invest dollars behind is relevant to what you post on a daily basis and what your brand's about and
your overall message.
Correct.
So it sounds like the big takeaways here are that just because people see your post doesn't mean they're going to like it or engage with it. So you do need to make sure that it's something that's engaging and quality content, and then also making sure that it's something that your audience is going to want to follow you for and engage you with, and that you have other content behind you on your feed that is going to reflect that boosted post.
Yeah, and certainly that it's timely too. So I think that's one thing, if you notice that there's a big trend that your followers are really hopping onto, be a part of that and get on there and maybe put some dollars behind it and just see how well it does for you. So just make sure you know what's going on with your audience and are included on what they're interested in.
Currently, is Instagram still preferring video content over still images?
Okay.
I would definitely say so. Yeah. So, it's I think we've talked about this before, actually, where if you're scrolling through your Instagram feed and you're seeing static images, okay, that's one thing, but it's not super engaging, whereas with the video element, you're getting some movement in there that's more likely to catch the eye. So, just generally speaking on a human basis, more people are likely to look at something that has movement and sound, especially added with it. And there's quite a bit of research behind how sound is quite effective.
So when I was a TV news reporter and we would put together our stories, we were always told to put Nat sound in our packages and put it at the beginning of a story. So when I was laying out the video of my story, I would put a Nat pop at the beginning. So let's say I'm doing a story at a movie theater. I want the popping of the popcorn to be the first thing people hear when my story starts playing, because that sound initially grabs people. Or, if we're on scene of breaking news, we always pause for a second so that people get the natural sound of the scene behind us. Maybe they hear sirens, maybe they hear commotion in the background, but that's naturally, we were taught in news is more attractive to the human ear and gets people to kind of look up and be like, oh, what's that? Versus just hearing speaking. So that natural sound in a video can be important in terms of storytelling. And then I've also seen, and I want to get your feedback on this too, but graphics, not as many still graphics anymore. We're seeing a lot more animation even behind graphics that people are posting, or I've noticed businesses too are getting more in on the video game that way.
Right, yeah, we're definitely seeing more animated content, the use of GIFs as well. And we could also start the GIF or GIF debate in an upcoming podcast if we want. But utilizing moving features. I mean, the power of video really is what's going to grab people's attention.
Well, one thing I do actually want to add there too is like, of course, with that beginning engagement, once Instagram sees that there's more engagement with a video like that, then it's really going to double down. The algorithm is really going to double down. It's going to be like, okay, this is good content. People like this. People are engaging with this. Let's serve it more and show it more. So it kind of feeds into itself, and that's why it becomes so popular.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably why we've also seen Instagram become more and more like TikTok, or,
yes.
When it saw the success of Snapchat, it added stories, and so did Facebook. I mean, it seems like Instagram is kind of the app that is trying to be every other app lately.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting, just simply because every app or every social media has a slightly different audience for it. And so I kind of think that Instagram is trying to put too many hats on and be too many things right now, which I think is also why we're seeing a trend where there's just less engagement, there's less users on there's less usage, because seeing TikTok's rise to fame, that's when they introduced Reels, and it kind of feels at times that they're trying to emulate what TikTok is, but that was never their original intention.
Right.
So something to also consider there and be careful of when you're putting your social media strategy together.
When we look at other strategies that can outsmart the algorithm, I know we already talked about photo quality. What can be said for publishing consistent stories on the feed, or just publishing consistently? Like, how many times a week should a business or a page be publishing new content?
Yeah, I would say at least post 1 to 3 times a week, just to keep yourself in front of those eyes. And then with that, you also want to have diverse content. So it's one thing to post like 3 posts a week, but people might eventually become kind of fatigued with that. So you want to have different types of content. Post video, post that static image, have a story, show that behind the scenes content that's only 15 seconds, because certainly there are people that come onto Instagram to view different types of content. Maybe they want to actually just scroll through stories and only see things quickly and just kind of get a top overview of what's going on with the people that they follow or the brands that they follow. So I think it's important to know what your audience is engaging with, and then have a little bit of consistency. And then also, you want to go live more often too, because that's another way to really get people engaged. Every time you go live, your followers are notified that you're going live, of course, unless they've unchecked that notification. But some people really enjoy that more longer form content that's very much kind of like a Q&A situation, where they feel like they're personally invited to be involved in what's going on with you.
And can that be seen in captions too? I know a lot of Instagram profiles do like contests now, or they say tag a friend, or, comment here. Bri, have you seen that be successful?
Oh, absolutely. Instagram giveaways are huge. Part of its success is due to the instructions that you have in an Instagram giveaway, encouraging followers to not only like your profile, but to also like the post and comment and tag 2 or 3 friends. If 100 people tag 2 or 3 more people, then it's growing the impressions exponentially. Mm-hmm. So all of which is backed by an incentive of enter our giveaway for perhaps it's a gift card or some kind of motivator that's going to encourage people to want to interact with that content.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll add too that I think really helps for outsmarting the algorithm is posting during peak hours. So there's quite a bit of research that you can do on when your followers are online, and we actually use a social media tool that gives us that information. So, for example, last month we noticed for a client, local office on aging, that their audience was primarily online in the evenings, and actually we found that for most clients that's the case. So we decided, okay, well, let's switch it up a little bit and try to post more often in the evenings to see if we can get better engagement. Well, we certainly did. This past month of November, I think over 100%. Like it was pretty significant. So you definitely want to be aware of that. And then one other thing I did want to add too about the stories on Instagram is that using links is very important. So obviously, as marketers, we want to send people where there's valuable action, like what they want to do. What's the call to action? What do we want them to take, or what action do we want them to take? Instagram is interesting in that in actual posts you can't have a live link, but you have to put them in either stories or in your bio. So that is something that's really important. So if you want to have that CTA, make sure you have a post, but then are also turning it into a story where people can directly click and go.
Great. Yeah, well, I mean, since this is the Access Success podcast, could you both share a story or a recent success or a recent win that we've had for a client or just in our personal work that you wanted to share?
The first that comes to mind is a senior living community that had an event where they welcomed a intergenerational audience to come in and meet some of their residents. And so by posting these images of the residents and guests interacting with each other, I found that it performed exceptionally well. And that's because, like I mentioned before, Instagram is a social media. So being social is being human. And so any opportunity to show the people behind your organization or your university, that's what's going to drive more engagement, because people want to celebrate wins and they want to see the community coming together and interacting with one another.
So just showing faces and just the people behind your business.
Exactly.
What about you, Lucas?
Yeah, so I have a great example too, where a couple months ago we had a client reach out, Sleep Safe Beds, wanting to increase their Instagram following because that was a newer account for them. They're already pretty big on Facebook, but really kind of wanted to get the Instagram to match that. So we ran, I think it was about $500 for a 45-day boosted campaign. And the goal was to increase their following by 25%. Well, we blew past that and reached 42% increase in followership. So nice. I think, that was an incredible one, and they were very pleased with that, and so were we. So that's the power of what boosted posts on Instagram can do for you.
And one common thread, too, that a lot of our success has come from was opportunities to tag our clients' business partners as well. Yeah. Trying to tap into their audiences. And if we have a post, we want to tag as many partners as possible so that they will be notified, they'll interact with that social content, and then feel encouraged to either share it on their Instagram stories or just private message people in their circles and say, hey, look, we partnered with this organization, they did this thing, we attended, here's some photos of us. So that's another way of increasing engagement.
Yeah, true. And polls as well. That's also important, and asking questions directly in stories. People really like that and enjoy telling you about what's going on in their lives. So I think that's important.
I think we've learned, Twitter maybe taught us that anytime people can chirp in, then they want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My last recommendation is also to be very thoughtful and considerate when it comes to the hashtags that you're using. I know personally I follow certain hashtags of interests of mine. So going back to the tattoo example, I like neo-traditional tattoos. So I made it a point to follow the hashtag neo-traditional tattoos. If someone attends your college or university or is a fan of your brand, they'll likely follow a hashtag that's either a hashtag that you either came up with or hashtags that are relevant to what you're posting and the kind of content you're posting. So on Instagram specifically, you want to be careful not to have too many, but also not to underutilize that opportunity to be able to get your content out there and leverage it within a relevant space to what you're sharing.
What would you say is ideal number? Is there one, or is that just kind of a myth?
Yeah, based off of my research and just personal experience, no more than 10 or 11. And I would say no less than 3.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
kind of sounds right.
Yeah, but I would
Yeah.
say so anywhere between 3 hashtags and 11 is a good safe space to be.
Yeah, especially before it starts to look spammy. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys again so much for coming on the show and being able to share these wins. I'm so glad that we can do this, not just to shout out our own successes with our clients, but also to share your experience and knowledge and our knowledge of what works with the rest of our audience and community. So thanks again for coming on today, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And for those watching or listening, you can head to accessu.com for more blogs and podcast episodes. We post new content every week, so we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Access Success Podcast, produced by AccessU, a division of Access Advertising and Public Relations. Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to keep up with what the world of education needs to hear, at AccessU Agency, and connect with us at accessu.com. Let's do something big.